Hey folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado Twin Pinnacle.
Man, psychic Tom Badger with his crystal ball on fire.
So probably the biggest news of last week, Fedor Emelianenko retiring, much like his Brazilian friend a couple weeks ago. He went down face first in the first round, like Mr. Hua. And just looked awful in there. It's just like he was a fish out of water, and he was just doing this because he wanted to run this one back. He felt like he could have done better, but he actually ended up doing worse in the rematch than he did in the original fight. But,
the words brutal and cruel are especially emphasized in the fight game when someone stays past their expiration date.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it forever, and we're going to continue to see it.
Yeah, he should have
what
just...
do you think of all the guys that were together there, Rich, if you were watching, quite a ceremony.
Oh, yeah, I love that part of it. To me, it was like, like the initiations of a gang. You get beat into the gang, and then the gang, like, hugs you, pats you on the back.
Well,
that's what happened.
I was very emotional watching that because that era back then, I mean, we talk about golden eras all the time.
Yeah.
But to me, the sport was just evolving. I mean, you could go on the underground, and most of the guys were fighters. You could talk to you directly. Things were so different back then. And it just, to see all those guys, and it's sad with Matt Hughes, did you notice the shape he's in?
Well, I mean, he's actually made quite a bit of improvements.
But it was...
over the years since his accident, so...
Yeah, but...
it is still sad.
But I mean, this was the definite closing of an era. And that doesn't mean that there aren't good fights now. I don't mean it like that. But that era was just so special.
Yeah.
And, time to look forward. And but it was pretty cool to see all the guys there. Some real nostalgia.
See, I always thought, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know Fedor is like an incredible fighter. He beat some amazing guys in his prime. He fought in just about every league there was to fight in, but I always thought that he was overhyped. And I wasn't a fan or follower of MMA in the earlier years when he was so dominant, but I'm talking like when he was fighting for like Bodog, and he was back and forth between the different leagues, and pride was gone. And then they came in from the UFC and they tried to negotiate with him, and he was dealing with M1 then, and his promoters wanted to do a co-promotion with the UFC. That was the only way they would let him sign with the UFC, and they wouldn't do it. The UFC wouldn't do it. So I actually wrote up an article that was circulating for years. The website finally came down. It became defunct. But I used to write for a company called Feed Crossing. And every now and then I'd just write a big long article and somebody would pick it up and buy it from Feed Crossing. And I would just get paid for the article. So anyway, long story short, my article was the top 10 mistakes made by Dana White. And one of his mistakes, I thought, was not signing Fedor earlier. And not signing him just to expose him as not as good as the UFC talent. Like, by not signing him, he let him go. He basically let him go out there and just build his record, and it was just never really challenged by anybody in those feeder leagues until he got to Strikeforce, and then Bellator, and ended up basically, having a couple real bad losses to Matt Mitrione, who got up first from a double knockdown. That was classic. And Ryan Bader,
you remember he was past his prime when Pride ended. And
Yeah.
then he was forced to come to America. But by then, I mean, it was.
But when
Yeah, I
I
think
first started
He was on
following
the downside. And
MMA,
you know, after he lost, he went on that 3-fight losing streak. I think he retired briefly, and then he went to Putin to get permission to come back.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
imagine that happening in America, going to Biden. You know, this president. Putin.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
I think in his prime, the difference was Pride paid so much more,
right.
and it did seem to attract more talent back then than the UFC. But I just wish we could have seen him in the UFC back in the Pride days. That would have been the test.
Well, I think maybe that might have been one of the reasons why he was so adamant about co-promotion, because he knew that the UFC wouldn't go for it. Because I don't think he wanted to get exposed. Like he didn't want to fight those big guys. He would rather just cruise along like he did. And I tell you, like, the very first real MMA fan I ran into before I really started watching it full time loved Emelianenko, and sat there with me for like 20 minutes trying to justify why he was the greatest that ever fought. And this was back in like early 2000s, and I was just like, no, I don't see it. And I was coming from more of a boxing standpoint then. I didn't really understand MMA the way I do now. But even back then, I looked at the quality of his opposition compared to some of the guys in the UFC at the time, and I was just like, I just don't see him beating those guys. I just don't, But bottom line is he's a legend. I mean, he's just had so many really amazing, good fights. The Pride era was so different too, because you had 10-minute rounds. 10-minute rounds.
Yeah, and in a ring.
Yeah.
And I've talked to guys that have done MMA in a
Soccer
ring.
kicks to the head.
It's more technical. I mean, it's a whole different game.
Yeah. Totally different rules. Headbutts, I think, were allowed at one point. So, just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, they were in the UFC too. Go back to watch Mark Coleman's early days.
Yeah. Speaking of Mark Coleman too, I was glad to see he's in pretty good health. We interviewed him years ago. Geez, I want to say it's almost 10 years ago now. But it was a great interview too.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to get him back on.
Yeah, I definitely could try to do
he
that.
He was definitely the George Foreman of that era. The last couple of years.
Yeah.
He had that peak where he was just unstoppable until he was stopped. But kind of like Foreman ran into Ali, Coleman ran into Maurice Smith. A lot of parallels there.
And I actually played a real big role in the whole Fedor versus Randy Couture situation, because of the science case. I had also started to look into the UFC covenants and all that kind of stuff, and their loan covenants, and Mark Cuban actually emailed me, because he actually said he had been watching my case, because he was in litigation with the UFC as well over the contract of Randy Couture, because he had a company called HD Net Fights at the time, and HD Net Fights wanted to acquire Randy Couture's contract so they could set up a fight with Fedor. And that fight never materialized because the fight lasted so long with the UFC, and I don't think they were able to get his contract to make it work. But it was also good to see Randy Couture there, and giving him a hug and a handshake after the fight. It's just too bad though. That would have been such a good fight. I think it would have probably been one of the most even fights Fedor could have possibly had with somebody who used to be in the UFC. It would have been really evenly matched. They were, very similar build at the time. Yeah, it was just a shame we couldn't see it. But I bet you Randy Couture after that fight the other night was thinking, geez, I should have challenged him myself for this, because at this point I don't think the UFC could do anything about it. That would have been a great last fight too, like what happened there to Nate Diaz, when they swapped the fights on him and he ended up going against Ferguson. Legend versus legend for his retirement fight. That would have been much better than Legend Killer versus Legend. That's what happened. But Fedor obviously didn't look like he could have continued in the fight game much longer anyway, based on that performance. But I thought the best part was when he was holding on to his gloves like he knew what he was doing, but then somebody had to tell him, "Oh, are you going to put your gloves down on the mat?" Because that's what the tradition is. Like he just had his gloves in his hands like it was like no big deal. That was the thing, He was going to walk out with them.
And you got to give Ryan Bader. You got to give Ryan Bader a lot of credit for giving Fedor the credit he did, and being so, because I would hate to see him cast as a villain. I mean, Ryan Bader had a job to do. He got a family to feed. He went out and did his job, but it was with respect. And remember what he said when he gave his interview. He says, "Everyone in here stand up and give this man a hand."
Yeah. Well, I was actually afraid he was going to go easy on him, and I was thinking that maybe it could go all 5 rounds, because Fedor is just so hard usually to knock down, knock out. Like, he's just always got that puncher's chance. So I didn't see him losing that quickly. 2 minutes and 30 seconds into round 1. But that's just how far he slipped off. I mean, he didn't look like he's been working out. Not that he ever did, but he got the big pot belly, and that was funny.
Yeah, he always had a bit of a dad body.
Yeah, one of the funniest parts too was when I think it was Chuck Liddell gave him a hug, and he pointed to Chuck's belly, and Chuck just like gave him the Santa Claus stance, and was just laughing. That was funny. But yeah, it was a good fight card. Underneath that, Brennan Ward came out like gangbusters against Sabah Homasi. Ended up TKOing him by head kick and punches in the second round, 1 minute and 34 seconds in. That was just a wicked back and forth contest for the entire first round. And then the second round it ended. But a lot of unanimous decisions around it. A lot of regular split decisions on there too. Johnny Eblen over Anatoly Tokov by unanimous decision. Yusuf Karakaya, that was at middleweight, by the way. Welterweights, Yusuf Karakaya against Ethan Hughes. Yusuf won by unanimous decision. Isaiah Hokett beat Peter Ishiguro by unanimous decision. Jalen Bates had a split decision win over Jornal Lugo at bantamweight. And then Neiman Gracie got another win over Dante Shiro, also by unanimous decision. And the only other big knockout, except for on the very undercard, Lorenz Larkin over Muhammad Berkamov by knockout, elbow knockout. 1 minute 41 seconds into the first round. Welterweight contest. And the sixth fight of the night we got to mention, because our former guest got a win, Henry Corrales, Mr. I'm glad I got some new teeth. Remember that when we talked to him?
Yeah.
Henry Corrales beat Ahmed Magomedov. It's very hard to beat a Magomedov or Nurmagomedov. Magomedov. Doesn't matter which kind. They're all tough to beat, but this one was a unanimous decision win for Henry. And we had a draw on the card. This is kind of crazy because there was a draw on the UFC card too. And I noticed when I was doing the DraftKings bets, the draws were crazy odds, like plus 5,000 for every pick for a draw. And if you pick the one that ended up being a draw on the UFC card, I don't even know if this other one here was even posted on DraftKings, but the UFC one was. I mean, you would have won some serious money, 51 times what you bet. So crazy odds, and somebody was lucky enough to get that. I didn't consider it ties worth betting on, but anyway. Steve Mowry going to draw against Ali Izaev. Unanimous draw. That's tough to do. Geez, I wonder what the odds on a unanimous draw would be if you could bet on that.
I don't think I've ever heard of one.
Yeah.
I'd have to
That's wild.
check my memory, my fading memory banks. Tony, you ever hear of that?
Unanimous draw.
A unanimous draw?
Yeah.
A unanimous draw?
Yeah,
I've never heard of it. Sure. All three judges. Wow.
all three judges. And I can only ever remember seeing one once. It was a boxing match. I don't remember the participants, but I remember the fight was over, and I said, "Man, that fight was really close." I could see it being a draw, and I remember the announcer was like, "All three judges have it the same, 95-95. This fight is a draw," and I was like, "Wow,
Over 10 rounds. Incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, not that it's a draw. That's not incredible. But usually you've got like 96-94, there's one goofy judge, 97-93, something like that, and the other two. But I just never heard of all three. That's wild.
I remember one. And actually, if I remember correctly, it wasn't that long ago. So I'm not talking about like the 1980s, 1990s. I'm talking about within like the last 15 or so years. I remember watching it. I'm like, and you know, like sometimes you'll have like a visual on something, and you could almost see it. And I'm like, and I'm looking at it like right now, I'm trying to go in like these little damaged resources in my brain, and I'm like, was like an ESPN card or was like HBO card? It was definitely televised, and it was definitely something that was on. It wasn't a pay-per-view, but it was televised. So I don't remember if it was ESPN card or. And I'm thinking it was ESPN. I'm not thinking it was like a mainstream HBO fight. It could have been something like maybe a showbox where they have up and coming fighters, but. I can almost see it. I can actually hear the announcer's voice. I cannot tell you the fighters. But yeah, so I mean, and it's like, and Tom, like you're right. Like decisions, like sometimes, like you're right. You'll see something like, and then the one I'll never forget. It was like I was a kid watching. I was about 13 or 14, so I was just learning boxing, and I was trying to learn how to score. And was I right? Most of the time, like I didn't know the integral parts of it. But sometimes you could see a fight and clearly, this guy won this round. It's anybody could see that. And I remember watching a fight and I thought fighter A won all 10 rounds. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Fighter A won all 10 rounds. And goes to the cards, it's like fighter A, 100 to 90. Just like I had it. See, I know what I'm talking about. Judge B has fighter B, 97-93. Well, I sure didn't see that coming. Then Judge C, 95-95 with draw. And I was like, like maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm thinking of that. A few weeks ago, I was asked to do an appearance at a birthday party. And I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about a young man that I've become friendly with over the last few years that has had some serious health issues where they didn't think he was going to make it. And he was the first Down syndrome patient in the country to receive a heart and liver transplant, which was done a couple years ago down at the one down in Nashville, University of Tennessee, I think it is, and or Vanderbilt University. And so I become friendly with this young man, and they asked me to come to his 40th birthday party, and I said, if you'd like me to come in attire, I will. So I go down there, and I meet a gentleman, and the guy, also from Philadelphia, was also at Vanderbilt at the same time, getting the same procedure. What are the odds, right? And this is especially during COVID, even more, obscure. So I'm meeting this guy, and I'm talking to him, and he goes, "Oh, you're into boxing?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you remember a fighter out of Philadelphia? I knew him, named Anthony Boyle." I said, "Absolutely." Anthony Boyle was one of those tough, perennial contender club fighters. from back in like the late 80s, early 90s. And I got to see him fight live, I think twice. Once at the National Guard Armory in Northeast Philly, and he won. And the other time was at the Philadelphia Convention Center, circa 1994-ish, right? And he's fighting the main event. It's a 12-round title eliminator fight. He's fighting a guy from Indiana named Marty Jakubowski. And it's a 12-round fight. Winner gets a title shot. So we're watching the fight, and all in the audience, we think Jakubowski wins the first round. Pretty clearly, Jakubowski wins first round. It's 10-9. The next 11 rounds, Anthony Boyle really takes it to him. Pretty good. The whole audience, especially the hometown kid, too. So the whole audience is like, oh, Anthony's got this title shot coming up. It's great. We're happy for him. And all the judges get up there and they said, all three judges have it the same. 120, 108. We're like, oh, shit. All three judges gave Anthony the first round as well, even though we thought Jakubowski won. For your winner, Marty Jakubowski. And we're all like, oh, my God. We in the audience were convinced Anthony won 11 of the 12 rounds easily. So, yeah, but then, luckily for Anthony, he did not get the title shot because Jakubowski then had to fight Julio Cesar Chavez, and it didn't go too well for him. And another thing, like, when you're watching fights, you know what? Here's another one, and I'll have to look at the scorecards. It was a draw. We went to a fight about 20 years ago down in Philadelphia, and it was on HBO, and the main event was Bernard Hopkins fighting this guy that was a number one contender that should have not been the number 100 contender. Guy was awful. The guy ran in the first round so bad, he didn't land a single punch. And then Bernard punished him over 8 rounds, and they stopped the fight. That fight was horrible because the guy was so mismatched. That's the one where Bernard Hopkins had one of his big fights at Larry Merchant. Bernard, aren't you embarrassed? Why am I embarrassed, Larry? Because this fight was a joke. I fought the number one contender.
Oh, yeah.
What do you want me to do?
I remember that.
I'll put the fight on the undercard. I'll tell you how watch a fight in person as opposed to watch it on TV, you get a different perspective. And this fight was a rematch between David Tua and Hasim Rahman. Tua won the first fight. He was behind on the cards. He knocked Rahman out. Left hook. So we're watching the second fight. And Tua, in the audience, he's landing these infrequent, but these big, impressive power punches. And when they land, they thought. Rahman is throwing these little chippy shots that, and Rahman had a good jab. So the fight's over. We all think 2-1, clearly. Like 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3, maybe 10 rounds to 2. And the fight ended up being a draw. And I'll have to look at the exact scorecards on it. So the next day I go home. And we're all walking out of there that night. Tua got robbed. And I'm talking about, like, Rahman fans. Like, Tua won that fight. We get home the next day and we play on HBO. Harold Letterman had it 8 rounds to 4 for Rahman. And Lampley and Merchant, the whole fight, Rahman's controlling the action. Rahman's landing the better punches. So maybe these short little inside bullshit shots that we couldn't see in the audience, the TV was really saying, no, look at Rahman's jab. He's controlling the action. Where all we could tell was Tua's big, impressive, but infrequent shots. That fight, look at it. That may have been a unanimous draw.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just kind of rare, though, to get all three of them to agree.
Oh, definitely.
I know.
So, we have some fights coming up this weekend. We also got to talk about last weekend for UFC, but let's get to some boxing first. Some results from last week. I was just looking at this. Amanda Serrano and what's her opponent's name here? Erica something. Oh boy, that girl could slug. Yeah, she ended up Just phone booth fighting for the entire fight. I've never seen anybody fight at that pace. I mean, granted it's 2 minutes, but they gave the crowd every bit of the 2 minutes, and it was really only until the last couple rounds that she was able to keep up that pace. But man, what a performance there. Erica Cruz Hernandez, for only 15 fights going in, she was surprisingly competitive. And just, with no defense. Barely any defense even for Amanda, but just enough for her to come away with the win, the unanimous decision win. She improves to 44, 2-1. Erica actually had 16 fights coming in. She was 15-1. She falls to 15-2 for all the titles: IBF, IBO, WBA, WBC, and WBO. That was a 10-rounder, 2 minutes each round, and then Alicia Baumgardner in the co-main event looked a little less impressive. She just basically cruised. The other opponent she had was also 15-1, but she only has 13 wins. So she improves to, or she had 13 going in, so she improved to 14-1. Her opponent falls to 15-2. Elhem Mekhaled, also for about the same amount of titles. IBF, IBO, WBA, WBC, and WBO. Yeah, all the same ones. So, she was a little bit less impressive, but definitely, same result, unanimous decision. I thought she could have gotten a knockout if she really tried for it. But it didn't seem like she was trying for it. She was just trying to fight a smart fight, live to fight another day. That was super featherweight. Main event was featherweight. And the Katie Taylor rematch now, I think, is set for May or June. I'm not sure exactly which, but I think they're going to do it overseas too. So, man, Amanda's going to need a lot of hard training to come out on top of that one, especially if it goes to the decision. And then we had our Somebody's O's Gotta Go fight. Richardson Hitchens ended up winning that one. He improved to 16-0. John Bauza fell to 17-1. That was for the IBF North American Super Lightweight title and the WBC United States Super Lightweight title. Not much on the undercard there worth writing home about. It was pretty much all unanimous decisions except for the WBC Silver Super Middleweight title. Female fight, Shadesia Green stayed undefeated with a TKO, moving her to 12-0, against Elin Sadirus, who falls to 8-2. Yeah, a lot of female fights on here. There's another 10-round female fight between Skye Nicholson, who's only 5-0. It's very soon to be doing a 10-round fight. She won a unanimous decision over Tanya Alvarez for the WBC Silver Featherweight title, which was vacant. Tanya loses her first fight, falls to 7-1. So there was two Somebody's always got to go on that one. Let's see if we missed anything else. Go back to Friday. Alright, so upcoming stuff. What do we got? Australia, yes. UFC 284. While we're waiting for the box rec schedule to load up, I might as well just start going through that. UFC 284. It's actually going to have a different commentating crew because Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan are not welcome in Australia. No. They are not going. They're not making the trip. I don't know whether it's just because they're not really keen on traveling that far for a fight or for what reason, but I read an article just before the show that
the vaccine, maybe. I don't think Rogan's patched. Maybe that's the reason.
Oh yeah. Well, It's funny you mentioned that because obviously, one of the biggest controversies was on Rogan's show was when he had that one doctor on there, and like they kept shutting down the link to it because he was the doctor that had the patent on the vaccine or something like that, or on the virus. I don't know what the hell it was. I think it was on the vaccine. But yeah, he was pretty entertaining. I watched that whole thing. It was like 3 hours. It was like the only Joe Rogan Experience podcast that I watched from beginning to end ever. But this time, it wasn't about health. It wasn't about racism. Because he got in some big trouble for the N-word there a little while back. Saying that too much. This time, it was because of what he said about Jewish people. And I doubt this has anything to do with him not appearing. But, the article's got to talk about his controversial stances, so they had to mention it. But apparently, I don't know if he lost any sponsors over it or whatever, but apparently he fell down that rabbit hole of talking about Jewish people and the stereotype of, them always having something to do with money. And I don't know exactly what he said, but one of the congressmen there, Ilhan Omar there, got in trouble for the same thing. And she came out later and said, well, I had no idea that was a stereotype, I just thought that was, understood fact. So that was kind of crazy. But, yeah, I think it's probably more like, that's a long time to travel for an event. And they're probably, they could probably think of a lot of other things they could be doing in those travel hours. But yeah, it makes sense if Australia is still requiring vaccines. Yeah, that definitely makes sense that he would not go there for that. I don't even know if it's like public knowledge that Joe hasn't taken it though. I would assume it has to be. I can't picture him being one of those guys. I just got my booster shot. I doubt it. Anyway, so the main event obviously is the big fight. Volkanovski, it's his area. He's coming up in weight to fight Islam Makhachev. Or Makhachev, however you want to pronounce it. Volkanovski has a couple more wins. Makhachev, he is probably a little bit more favored in this fight just because of the way he's been destroying people. But Volkanovski is just one of those dynamic strikers, and he's capable of going all 5 rounds. This one is definitely going to be a war. However it ends, whoever wins, it's not going to be like people think it is, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Volk just ran out of competition. I mean, he cleaned out the division.
Yeah.
So this is, I guess he could have stayed there, but you got to give him credit for going in the cage with that monster. So, I got to go with Islam, but I'm looking for one heck of a fight.
So Islam has 4 knockouts, 11 submissions. That accounts for 65% of his wins by stoppage. And he has, let's see, since his unanimous decision win over Davi Ramos back in September of 2019, he has 3 submissions, 1 TKO, and another submission over Charles Oliveira. He has dispatched Charles Oliveira, Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, Thiago Moises, and Drew Dober in that span. Pretty good names. But if you're an underdog fan, Alexander Volkanovski is definitely the underdog, and he actually has pretty similar knockout or submission rate, except most of his finishes are by knockout rather than submission. He has 12 knockouts, 3 submissions, and that makes 60 instead of 64%. Just 10 decisions out of his 25 wins, almost half. But some really, really, really big names on this list of people he's beaten over the years. He doesn't have any big knockout streak going. He's got, let's see, 5 out of his last 6 went to decision. Chan Sung Young was the unlucky guy to go down by knockout. And that was in the 4th round. 45 seconds into the 4th round, back in April of 2022. And guys he's knocked out before that: Chad Mendes, Jeremy Kennedy, Yusuke Kasoya. And let's see, Yusuke Kasoya. Yeah, that's what it is. That was his first UFC fight back in 2016. But yeah, this is going to be a good one. I think if Alexander wins, it's more likely to be by decision, or like he's just went over his record, probably a late knockout. Even his debut, it was in the 2nd round, that knockout. He's got a couple 2nd round knockouts. One with 3 seconds left in the 2nd round. Chad Mendes, he knocked out in the 2nd round. So he likes 2nd round knockouts. He's got 3 of them in the UFC. And then the 4th round. He's gone all 5 rounds. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of his last 5 fights. All 5 rounds. Crazy. So, but I just don't know. I mean, Makhachev is just so dynamic. He's such a good wrestler. But, you know, Volkanovski is pretty good with the takedown defense, number 1. He's really good with his striking. And he's one of those guys that, for some reason, he almost seems like he gets better as the fight goes on. And like a tight competition really brings the best out of him. So I expect this to be an all-out war. I don't see a 1st round knockout. I think if it does end by any kind of knockout or submission, it's going to be 2nd round or beyond. And I almost don't even know who to pick in this one. I'm going to say draw. No. Definitely not a draw. But, yeah, I'd like to see Volkanovski win. Yeah, I have nothing against Islam. But I just love his style. I love his willingness to step up and take this fight. And, yeah. I just always like seeing the guy, you know, take a challenge that nobody thinks he can win and win it. But Makhachev certainly has the potential to knock him out or submit him. Arm triangle was the last submission over Oliveira. And Oliveira, I mean, he's one of those guys that it's just very unpredictable. Sometimes he goes in there and he's just unstoppable. And it's just, this time he's just got pushed around. Really didn't have much of a response. And went down by the submission. But even he made it to the 2nd round, you know. So, but before that, Makhachev didn't really fight anybody with a huge name. Bobby Green, he TKO'd in the 1st round, but that was probably his biggest name. Dan Hooker, he submitted in the 1st round. Before that, too, Dan Hooker is a big name 10 years ago. Not as big now. He's kind of like, you know, just one of those journeymen with a name, which probably keeps him in the UFC. Anyway, so I like Volkanovski to win this one. I'm gonna say another 2nd round knockout. But 2nd round knockout or decision. I don't know. Makhachev is so dangerous. I'm gonna think that Volkanovski knows the best thing to do is to find a way to take him out. I think that knockout would be more appropriate because he's such a good submission artist himself. He obviously knows how to defend submissions. So there you have it. Place your bets. Volkanovski by decision or knockout?
I have a boxing historical question for you guys.
Yep.
Do you guys remember a fighter out of Houston, Texas by the name of Rocky Juarez?
Rocky Juarez. Yeah, sounds familiar. Definitely sounds familiar.
He was an Olympian, I think, back in 2000. I think he took the silver medal. And he was, tough guy. Amazing chick. Do you remember him, Tom?
Faintly. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember his fight against undefeated Chris John of Indonesia on HBO?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, I remember watching it, and I thought a lot of people thought John won the fight. Juarez had him hurt pretty good in the 12th round. Too little, too late, right? Most people thought Chris John won the fight. He was tall, lanky. He was undefeated. He ended up like 46-1. He ended up losing his last fight. And the judge's decision. All three judges are in agreement. 114. This fight is a unanimous draw. Wow. Yeah, I was looking up unanimous draw, and I found it, and I remember watching that. I could literally see Michael Buffer in my head, and that was the fight in 2009. I knew it wasn't that long ago. I am not as brain damaged as people say I am.
Rocky Juarez, yeah. Alright, I'm just looking at stuff for this weekend now. Oh, we gotta get through this card though. Islam Makhachev. Gonna have a tough fight for him, either way. Co-main event there is pretty interesting too. We got. It will load, I'll tell you in a minute. Alright, Yair Rodriguez, 14-3 against Josh Emmett, 18-2 at featherweight. And we got Jack Della Maddalena, 13-2 at welterweight, fighting Randy Brown, who's 16-4. We got the big boys, Justin Tafa at heavyweight, 5-3, fighting Parker Porter, who's 12-7. Light heavyweights, Jimmy Crute, 12-3, fighting Alonzo Menafield, 13-3. We got Tyson Pedro. Tyson Pedro, he is 9-3, fighting Modestas Bukauskas, who is 13-5, also a light heavyweight fight. His last week's card didn't have much for heavy guys at all. Now we've got 3 fights in a row above light heavyweight or above. 7th fight tonight, we got Joshua Kulibayao. He is 10-1-1 at featherweight, fighting Milsik Bagdasarian, who is 7-1. Now, I haven't done much of my analysis yet because I had such a shitty week last week betting on the fights. I got like 2 or 3 correct, but not on the big money fights. But anyway, I just gotta learn. That's all. Gotta be better than that. Gotta be at my NFL peak, basically, against these guys. We're gonna have to pick your brain on that a little later, Tony, for the SuperBowl bets. Anyway, Shannon Ross in the 6th fight of the night, 12-6 at flyweight, fighting Clayton Rodriguez, 7-2. It's a good matchup. Jamie Malarkey, Joe Biden's favorite fighter. He's 15-5. And he's fighting undefeated Francisco Prado, 11-0 at lightweight. Then we got Jack Jenkins, 10-2 at featherweight, fighting Don Shanis, who's 12-4. Konklak Sufisara, 7-3 at strawweight, fighting Elise Reed, 6-2 in a female fight. And Shane Young, 13-6 at featherweight, fighting Blake Bilder, B-I-L-D-E-R. He is 7-0 with 1 draw. First fight of the night. Boy, what a bunch of fights these guys have at lightweight. Zubaira Tukagov. He is 20-5 with 1 draw at lightweight. Fighting Elvis. Elvis with an E. E-L-V-E-S, like elves. Elvis Brenner Oliveira. He is 13-3. So that's February 11th, this Saturday. I don't know what they're going to do with the time difference. You know, Australia's got quite a significant time difference. But I imagine it'll probably be like midday or something like that. So make sure you check that if you're going to bet on it, you know, or you're going to put in a FanDuel lineup. I haven't even done that in weeks now since I moved to DraftKings. In the sports book. But if you're going to put a lineup together, you know, make sure you check the times, because you might go to log on and be like, oh shit, it's too late. I got to do live bets now. Or the whole fight's over. It's even worse. Alright, so let's see what we got for this weekend. We got a Jesus fight right here. Baja, California. Jesus Esparza Galindo, 8-0-1, fighting Mario Vera Alfaro, 5-6. I don't think Jesus is going to need a miracle on that one. We also have on the same card, Abraham versus Jesus. Abraham Perfecto Valdez, 8-1, fighting Felix Cruz de Jesus. De Jesus. He is 2-4-1. A couple Jesus mismatches there with Jesus on either side of him. Alright, we're going to have to increase the ratings here to find the good ones. Have I told you guys I hate the new boxer? Have I said that before?
Oh yeah, I know.
Here's one from Hamilton, Ontario. Ryan Rozicki, 16-1, fighting Arturs Gorlovs, who is 10-2-1. And the co-main event there, Joaquin Murrieta Lucio. He's 11-11-3. Well, I don't know if this is the co-main event, but they say it's a 2-star fight. So, Lucio, 11-11-3, fighting John Michael Bianco, who is 4-0 at super middleweight. It's kind of a mismatch here for a title. Looks like it's in France. Florian Montels, 24-2-2. Got to be our mismatch of the week. Fighting Garam Eloyan, who is 8-4, and they're fighting for the European Union Super Bantamweight title, which is vacant. So, yeah, Florian, he is probably going to win this one. We got another card. It looks like the Philippines. KJ Kataraja, 15-0, fighting Edward Hino for the Oriental and Pacific Boxing Federation Super Flyweight title. Kataraja is 15-0. Edward Hino is 15-1-6. 6 draws. Wow. That's crazy. That's more than a third of his fights draws. Let's see. Wembley Arena has another fight going on this weekend. It's going to be on Sky TV. Anthony Sims Jr. at super middleweight, 23-1, fighting Zach Chelly, who is 12-1-1. And we got somebody's got to go. Adam Azim, 7-0, against Santos Reyes, who is 12-0 at super lightweight. And we got Tyler Denny at middleweight, 15-2-3, fighting Brad Pauls, who is 16-0, fighting for the BBBC English middleweight title. And Emmanuel Rodriguez in action in Atlantic City. He is 12-0, fighting Sharoni Carter, not Shoni Carter, Sharoni, or Sharon. I don't know how you pronounce it. He is 13-5 at bantamweight. And the big Showtime fights, we've got Ray Vargas coming in undefeated at 36-0 from the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. He is fighting O'Shaki Foster, who is 19-2. That was for the WBC World Super Featherweight title. And we got a heavyweight. Somebody's always got to go for the WBA Fedor heavyweight title. I've always wondered what the hell that means. Fedor. I don't know. I haven't seen that one in a while. Anyway, sounds like a Russian guy. Victor Vikrist. He's 11-0, fighting for that. Fighting 8-0, Lanier Piro. And we got the WBC Continental America's welterweight title going on between Mario Barrios, 26-2, fighting Jovian Santiago, 14-2-1. That's a welterweight bout. And then we get into Tuesday. Tuesday from Tokyo. We got another one on next week, Thursday night, too. Let's see. Tuesday in Tokyo, we got Kenta Nakagawa, 22-4-1 against Akio Farutani, who's 10-5. Now it's for the WBO Asia Pacific Super Flyweight title. And we got Ryusei Kawara, who is 9-1, fighting 19-1 with 2 draws. Masayoshi Hashizumi for the Japan Boxing Commission Super Flyweight title. So double super flyweight big fights on that card, and then in Tokyo on Thursday as well. They have all the Japanese fights in the middle of the week. We got main event Kazuki Nakajima, 13-1-1 against Kenny Demisillo, who is 16-5-2. That one's for the WBO Asia Pacific Super Bantamweight title. And Tsubasa Kaura, he is 15-2-1, fighting Yuni Takada, 10-8-3 for the Japanese Boxing Commission minimum weight title. And yeah, that's about it. And here's one from your call next Friday. I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but it's pretty interesting. David Adele, he is 10-0, fighting Dimitro Bezus, 10-0. Both of them 10-0 for the WBO European Heavyweight title, which is vacant. That's going to be in Bethnal Green, your call in the UK. We got a 12-0. Somebody's got to go also on Showbox next Friday. And Ardreel Holmes, 12-0 against Ismail Villarreal, 12-0, super welterweight. And a 13-1 versus a 14-1 on the same card. That's funny. We'll get to those next week. I gotta find this other card. Okay. So last week we had the Derrick Lewis fight. He did not do so well. Got taken out in the very first round. Kind of matched up with the Fedor fight pretty well. It was kind of crazy because this fight actually had quite a delay. They didn't even actually start the preliminaries even until 10 o'clock. And apparently the fight was supposed to happen in Korea. That's why there was all these Koreans on the card last week. And Asian fighters. But they had it in the UFC. I mean, they had it in Vegas. It's funny. Yeah, let me just bring this up and find this. Who did he fight? Who was Derrick Lewis's opponent, Tom? Sergey Spivak?
The guy from Moldova, Spivak, or...
Spivak.
Yeah, and I didn't stay up for it. That was way too late for me. But yeah.
Boy, was I pissed about
going.
that result. Man, that pissed me off so bad. Because I had the knockout in every round that counted. And I was counting on the polar bear to save my night. And I had the only thing I had for Derrick Lewis was him getting a first round knockout. And ended up going 3 minutes and 5 seconds into the first round, and it ended by arm triangle submission. And the odds were even higher for it to end by submission. You know, heavyweights hardly ever go to submission. So, I was so bummed out because, I mean, he was very close to TKOing him. He could have just thrown punches, but instead he locks on this crazy arm triangle and gets the win that way. So, I was so pissed. But, I mean, I predicted that. I predicted Sergey would win. We both talked about that last week. Derrick is just too up and down. And the crazy thing is, Dana White came out after the fight and specifically addressed Derrick Lewis as far as whether he'd get cut after this. And he said, I love the guy. He's definitely not going anywhere. So, just again, like, I don't know how many times I've mentioned Dana White's treatment of fighters over the years. As far as, you know, company people. The company guy, you know, the guy that will take whatever fight you give him, you know, never has a bad thing to say about the promotion. Like, some people in some other businesses would call it, you know, the guy who kisses the most ass or the biggest brown noser. But the UFC has always had their company people. And I, you know, with Derrick Lewis being so outspoken, funny, and, you know, says what he means all the time, I find it so surprising that he's one of those company guys that Dana would never cut just because he likes him. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just he likes his character. He likes the fact that he says funny shit. Maybe that's why he likes him. Maybe it's not because he sucks up to him. But yeah, Derrick Lewis, I would not expect in any other league, if he lost that many fights in a row, for him to be sticking around. But here in the UFC, he is. And you gotta wonder what the hell was going through his head that entire fight, because he looked so sloppy, he looked so unmotivated. It's, I don't know. Well, you know, as far as like Dana White goes, now that we know that his father was his father-in-law used to be a freaking skimmer from the casinos and had mob connections. Like, I just wonder how many other fights, or how many fights overall in the UFC could possibly be fixed. And if the guy loses and then Dana comes out and says, "Oh, we're going to keep him," like, it even makes you wonder even more if fights like that get fixed. And then the fact that it ends by triangle choke. Like, what's going on with that? Somebody made a good bet on that, I'm sure. I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, that's the third in a row for Derrick Lewis. And the fourth in his last five. Fourth loss in his last five. All TKOs or KOs, except for that triangle choke. So yeah, the last guy he beat was Chris Daukaus back in 2021. I mean, if he loses his next fight, it's going to be even more crazy. Because, you know, there have been some people with big enough names that just based on the draw of their name and the capability of having that puncher's chance knockout. I mean, you look at Derrick Lewis's record, 21 out of 26 fights that he won ended by knockout. But 7 of 11 of his losses now also came by knockout. But yeah, it's crazy. 4 in a row is a little harder to be kept. So we'll see. We'll really see how much Dana likes Derrick the next fight. But yeah, Lewis has got to do something differently. He's got to. Because what he's doing now just is not working. Okay, we had this fight was all stacked at the top as far as the weights go. Whole entire fight card up until the main. The main fights were all lighter weights. And then we got a light heavyweight in the co-main event. This was a great fight. Devin Clark ended up winning by unanimous decision. Turns out the big difference was a headbutt we talked about earlier. They're illegal now. Dawoon Young, it didn't do much damage with it, but he clearly held Devin by the ears, basically, and shoved his forehead into his. So, I mean, I don't know whether it was warranting taking a point, or if he should have just warned him, gave the other guy time to recover, and put him back in the same position. I would think that would have been a better idea. But, well, actually, just standing it up when Dawoon Young was on top was bad enough. So, I also thought Devin Clark did enough to win without the headlock, but it was definitely a good fight to watch. Definitely not the outcome I bet on, but it's a good fight to watch. Marcin Tybura paid off for me. I said last week, I said it right here on the show, that Blagoy is a tough guy to knock out. He probably won't get knocked out. Tybura did his best. I mean, I got the feeling that he was doing just enough, though, because he probably had that knowledge going in that Blagoy was not going to be easy to knock out. But, just for shits and giggles, I put a knockout bet on him, with the decision bet as well at the same time. And I came close, boy. It came pretty close in that third round. He had a shot at it, but it's like he just took his foot off the gas. For whatever reason, he's just, at those heavyweights, it's rare to see a guy in the heavyweight division in a fight like this that's absolutely chiseled, And Marcin is not really chiseled, but he's not really fat like Blagoy is. Blagoy got a big old beer belly, basically. And very short reach, so I think it was pretty much a game of Marcin just trying to use his range, stay on the outside, and just win. I mean, it looked like he was just content with getting a decision, and was not really looking for the knockout. But there was a couple points where if he had turned that gas up a little bit, put his foot down on the pedal, he could have got it. He definitely could have got it. Blagoy hasn't been knocked out, but he definitely could be based on that performance. And they were talking about some of the other fighting styles he's involved in, where he just totally clobbers people, but Blagoy was just totally overmatched in this one. He just it was really only like one or two punches early on in the first round where he scared Tybura at all. Otherwise, it was kind of a predictable fight. And then the draw happened between Do Ho Choi and Kyle Nelson. That was a majority draw in this one. 3-round fight at featherweight. And yeah, that one was kind of crazy. Now this one I completely missed. But I did have Fugit to win by knockout. Just not in the first round. Didn't have the first round knockout. But, I got that bet. He beat Yusaku Kinoshita by TKO in 4 minutes and 36 seconds. First round. And then before that we had Anshul Jubli winning a lightweight match against Jika Asperito Sariga by TKO in the second round, 3 minutes and 44 seconds in. This one I had a parlay with this guy, Jia Yi, against Jiang Yongli, and I really thought Jia won the decision, but it ended up being a split decision win for Jiang Yongli, but I really needed Jia Yi to knock the guy out, and that just did not happen. So that one sucked. Rinya Nakamura before that at bantamweight beating Toshiomi Kazama by knockout punch just 33 seconds into that fight. And Hyun Sung Park at flyweight beating Sung Guk Choi by rear naked choke submission, 3 minutes and 11 seconds into round number 3. And Jun Young Park beating Dennis Tiululun by rear naked choke submission. I got that right. Jun Park, they call him the Iron Turtle. And I had not enough money. I did not put enough money on it. I just had the win by decision, but I should have put a lot more money on it because it was pretty much bound to happen. First round submission was probably even higher odds. I didn't bother to put around on that one. And then Tatsuro Taira winning by armbar submission 4 minutes and 20 seconds into round 1 over Jesus Santos Aguilar. That's our Jesus fight of the week. I put a lot of money on Jesus. Not like big money, but I put a lot of bets on him because the odds were so high. He was like the guy least expected to win. But he had a lot of finishes, so I figured, we'll throw some money around and see what happens. We'll hope Jesus saves us. Jesus did not save me, but I did hedge my bet with a first round submission pick for Tatsuro, so I didn't lose any money on that fight, but boy, I think there was one parlay I made where if Marcin Tybura was able to get the third round knockout and Jesus was able to get a submission in the third round as well, submission win in the third round, I would have won on a $5 bet. I would have won $4,000.
Wow.
So that was a parlay I put together by myself. But I didn't have much hopes for it. But boy, that third round of the Tybura fight was close. That was close again. I've already lost it when Jesus lost, but still, I was like, oh man, that was close. There's an option you can do called stake your singles too. So I think I did that on that fight where you bet the parlay for one price, and then you could put like $2 towards each individual bet in the parlay to win. So that was good. Alright, so the only other thing we got coming up is the PFL. It's like that's tomorrow night, the heavyweights, week 3 of the PFL Challenger Series. And that's kind of interesting, it's going to be heavyweights because Jake Paul, I did see that he joined the PFL. I have not seen any opponent announcement yet for him. And last night I was cruising around Facebook and I caught a post from Kenzie Morrison where he had Jake Paul's face on the head of a deer that he had shot and killed. So, since he lost his first fight, Kenzie really hasn't been pushing for the Jake Paul fight as much. But this was the first time in a while I'd seen anything on that front, and made me think of an idea. So I posted in the comments that Jake would find it pretty tough to avoid you if you joined the PFL and challenged him. So one of his other friends commented next and was like, well, maybe you're mistaken. He does boxing, not MMA. And I go, well, Jake Paul's in MMA now with the PFL, so, how could he avoid you if you went into the PFL after him? It's the same weight. And challenged him. You're both having your first MMA fight. You both got big boxing names. Although I would assume that Morrison would be the bigger draw. Better talent, I should say. Maybe not bigger draw, just because Jake Paul has the YouTube fame. But yeah, that would just be epic. I was thinking of it along the lines of like.
You know what would sell that fight? To be totally honest, I'll tell you what would sell that fight: the name Morrison.
Yeah.
Jake Paul, is going to bring a lot of publicity in because of his YouTube following and his name and all the extracurricular activities he's doing. The guy's everywhere. The guy knows how to make money. Now, a few months ago, they were talking about him fighting Hasim Rahman Jr. Hasim Rahman Jr., they would make money because it was Jake Paul. Hasim Rahman Jr. would bring next to nothing to that promotion because, okay, his father was heavyweight champion of the world. That's great. But he was basically a one-hit wonder 20-some years ago. Casual boxing fans do not know Hasim Rahman. A lot of fans know the name Morrison. Why? One, because, Tommy Morrison had a successful career. He was mainstream. I mean, not just his win over George Foreman, not just his bad loss to Ray Mercer, not just his whole thing with HIV or not HIV, and his wife Tricia is keeping his name out there, but Rocky V. If you're talking about the son of Tommy the Machine Gun, and there's enough of the Rocky following out there that will be like Jake Paul versus the son of Tommy the Machine Gun. And, you sell it on that name. And let's not gloss over the one also big fact. He has the right skin color. Let's be honest. Let's straight talking here. He has the right skin color, and that will sell.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they do it in MMA too, Jake Paul has said his intent is to do a fight with somebody in boxing and MMA. To go through that whole thing that we've always talked about with the MMA versus boxing debate over the years. Which sport is better. The only way you can really prove it is if you have two fighters fight in both sports against each other.
Right.
One from boxing, one from MMA. Here you'd have two boxers going into MMA first, and then they could fight a boxing match later. Makes perfect sense. And I see it like one of those WWE heel moments, like where maybe Jake Paul's doing like a press conference for the PFL, and they haven't told him his new opponent yet, and then all of a sudden, out from the back dressing room runs Tommy Morrison's son, Kenzie. Oh, that would be classic. That would be hilarious. And then, slap the mic out of Jake's hands or something. I would pay to see that, for sure. I would definitely have to see that fight. But I really do think Jake is scared to fight a guy on his level. There's a reason why he picked Tommy Fury for his next opponent. I mean, it's probably the guy with the most boxing experience he'll ever face. If he keeps boxing after getting involved in the PFL and doing that crazy deal with the UFC. I also read something about Jorge Masvidal having a big beef with Jake Paul too, over the way he talks about fighter pay. But Jake Paul just did a deal with the UFC with Prime Energy. Did you guys hear that? He's got this new energy drink. It's more like a hydration deal than it's all sugar and caffeine. So he's got this Prime hydration drink. And how do you get a drink named Prime that's not already been done? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like that just sounds like a brand that should have been out there 10 years ago. But anyway, Jake Paul, however he got it, has a good formula with it, tastes good. Dana White was actually drinking it before the announcement was made that it is now the official energy drink of the UFC. Before this first came out, there was Jake Paul had put it out there. There was going to be a big announcement, and then the announcement came out, and I was just like, "Really? You got to be kidding me!" I thought it would be for the Slap League that he was going to sponsor, but nope. It's the official drink of the UFC now. Crazy that deal would happen, but considering the history between Dana White and Jake Paul, and the amount of times Jake Paul has totally dissed the guy and just absolutely eviscerated the whole UFC contract situation. And then he signs a contract with the UFC for sponsorship. It's like, so I doubt you'll see Jake Paul do another diss track at this point of Dana White. I think they're on better terms now, and I don't think you'll see, like I said, I always said that he was going to end up fading into the bushes, like the Homer Simpson meme on this whole thing about fighter pay. You know, just blows my mind that he would make a name for himself arguing for better treatment of fighters and all this, and vilifying the way the UFC does business, and then letting the money talk and walking right over the UFC and saying, hey, let's do deals. I don't know. I mean, obviously the money was right, but that's what I call selling out. In a big way. Anyway. So, at the PFL tomorrow night, we've got Danilo Marquez in the main event at heavyweight, 12-4, fighting Ross Hilton, who's 9-6. We got Vitor Resende, 4-0 at heavyweight, fighting 1-0 Isaiah Pinson. Abraham Babley, who is 2-0, fighting Hassan Graham, who is 1-0. Louis Sutherland, 4-1 at heavyweight, fighting Alton Meeks, who is also 4-1. I'd really like to be a heavyweight fighter named Meek. Meeks. M-E-K-S. M-E-E, I should say. M-E-E-K-S. The meek will inherit the earth, right? Unreal. Alright, let's just see if there's any news worth checking out. News. Probably open my alerts. I always get the feeling I'm forgetting something big. What did we miss? Oh. We gotta talk about the Super Bowl. Who's going to score the first touchdown, Tony?
Yeah. Who's going to score the first touchdown? That's a great question. I'm going to go, and I'm going to say it's going to be Jalen Hurts, the quarterback.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I heard a highlight. I think it was last night. I was watching NFL Live, and it was a highlight of Jalen Hurts running it in for a touchdown. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is probably the kind of game that he would score the first touchdown.
Yeah. Well, he's done it both games so far.
Yeah.
Both playoff games so far. He had the one where he did like a bootleg, and then he had the one where he did the quarterback sneak.
Because last week he was a little bit... I mean, not last week. The week before, he was a little bit cautious because of his injury. But, another 2 weeks now to let that heal.
Well, you figure the first game against
and no other games left. He's going to be aggressive.
He was cautious. Because you figure the first game back, they opened the game by throwing the ball, I guess just to knock some of the rust off, which I thought was not the greatest game plan in the world. But then they settled in, and then the second game, he had some throws out there, but they were pounding the ball so much on the run, there was really no need to use an aerial attack because they were just grinding them on the ground. Now, what I think the biggest fact during the game is going to be the Eagles' defense. You have such a high-flying offense in Kansas City, but at the same time, if anybody's had a high ankle sprain, I know I have in the past. I was telling a friend of mine tonight, you get a high ankle sprain, and you get a lot of swelling in the ankle. Now, granted, Mahomes is getting the best treatment, that professional money can buy. But you can't make it heal exponentially faster. You can't. It's human body. I know when I had one 20 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, same age as Mahomes is now, or maybe a little younger, my ankle was really swollen, and then when I was trying to spar again, I couldn't turn my left hook because I couldn't, my ankle was too swollen to make that turn. and then his is on his right ankle, which is his push-off angle to throw. So is that going to take some of the zip off his passes? Don't know. Is he going to be able to scramble out of the pocket? Don't know. He did in the championship game one time on the last play of the game before they kicked the field goal. But if you can rush him, especially from his vision side, so not the blind side so much, but his vision side where you get in his face and you cause him to move off his point, you can disrupt his game. If you go back to when Tampa beat him 2 years ago, Brady's last Super Bowl, first year he was with Tampa, wasn't as much as what Brady did as was what the defense did. And the defense pressured Mahomes from the beginning. And they moved him off his point where he couldn't set his feet. He couldn't make the throws he needed. They sacked him. If the Eagles can do that, especially early, and then with their offense, you mix the attack. You can attack them on the ground, but this is a team that gives up a lot of yards to wide receivers in the air. They're going to go with 2 rookie starting quarterbacks. The one's pretty good, but still the fact of the matter, he's a rookie against 2 All-Pros. Your offense, can hang, and if your offense can keep pace, let your defense win the game.
Right. April 1st, it's not a April Fool's joke. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we're going to have Game Bred Boxing 4. It's Game Bred is the nickname of the guy we were just talking about. What the heck is it? Jorge Masvidal. There we go. Brain fart there. Jorge Masvidal's promotion. That's one of the things he had a beef with Paul about too. Jake Paul's out there talking about he's paying fighters, and Jorge prides himself on how he pays his fighters in his own promotion. And he's one of those UFC company people, I guess, because he had nothing but nice things to say about how Dana White has managed the UFC. But that's somebody who's probably doing business with him, sending fighters from his promotion up to the UFC. So, anyway, the story here: it's Vitor Belfort fighting Ronaldo Jacare Souza in one of the fights. And we have seen Vitor box a little bit on another Jake Paul undercard. It's a little crazy. Souza began his lengthy MMA career after a successful run through the highest levels of grappling in BJJ. And we all know about Vitor. He was doing good, still good in MMA while he was on the TRT, but not so much after he got off of it. Well, yeah, that's going to be a good one. I thought there was some other matchups there too, but I guess not telling us here what else is on the card. Anyway, as that gets closer, we'll update everybody on the other fights. I think there's another couple of MMA fighters going against each other on that card. But speaking of boxing and MMA, we have Deontay Wilder now wanting to step up to Francis Ngannou for that challenge. And I also read today that there's still hopes for the Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou modified fight. It's going to be like kickboxing, I guess. I don't know. Smaller gloves, but also boxing. Something like that. It's like a hybrid, they call it, between Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury. But Deontay Wilder says he wants a boxing match and an MMA fight, which we were just talking about Jake Paul wanting. But this would be heavyweights, Ngannou and Deontay. And it's kind of funny because I just watched last night the highlight reel of Charlie Zelenoff. And, you know...
Man, I haven't heard him in so long.
Yeah, Charlie used to just go up to people and be like, hey, you want to spar? A little light sparring? And then he would just, like, go house on them. So, apparently he said... Yeah, apparently he said a lot of bad shit about Deontay and his family. I guess his daughter, even. So, Charlie went to challenge him. I mean, I guess he got balls to just show up in that situation, but Deontay was really angry. Really angry. He wanted to kill the guy. And, you know, he knocked him down a couple times, and Charlie kept, like...
Yeah, that's about 10 years old.
Yeah, it is a bad one. But Deontay's people were, like, holding him back. It was bad.
Yeah. Because then it was like... Because he took a swing at him. I forget if Deontay went to his gym or if he went to Deontay's gym. I don't remember how that happened. But they went there and they gloved up. And then, like, as soon as Deontay touched him, he fell. And Deontay swung on him while he was on the ground and actually swung over his head.
Yep.
And then Charlie got up. And then, like, whatever. So as soon as Deontay touched him again, you know, he just went down. And then he got up, and then Deontay, like, made like a move like he was running towards him, and Charlie bolted out of the gym. But then he claimed it as a disqualification victory because Deontay swung on him on the ground. Still undefeated. At the time, he was like only about 50 something and 0.
Yeah.
Now, the last point, I think he was up in the 300-0 mark.
Yeah. So Wilder says in an interview with Trill Boxing Talk, whatever that is, that he and Ngannou had already talked about fighting each other when they met at the UFC Apex last September, just a few weeks before he knocked out Robert Helenius. And Wilder said that UFC President Dana White was also involved in those conversations, and it sparked his interest in facing Ngannou in both boxing and mixed martial arts. He says, I even thought about this idea, though. I was like, all right, let's make it a 2-fight deal. Everybody always comes to boxing, but let's do this. You come to my shit, I come to yours. You know what I'm saying? You feel me? You come to my house, I come to yours. I'm a true warrior. So this just always brings me back to Zuffa boxing. I wonder if those shirts are collector's items now. Or if they still make them. I think they still make them. Zuffa boxing. Never came to pass, but boy, they tried to act like it was gonna at one point, and then Dana realized how hard it was gonna be and how the contracts would be completely different because the Ali Act, and he pretty much gave up on it. Well, he did give up on it, totally. And the fact that he's doing the slap league now when Zuffa boxing used to be his goal is just so pathetic to me. So pathetic. The more I see of that slap league, the more disgusted I get by it. That's crazy. I'd like to see those guys in 5 years. You know, I don't think they'll still be slap fighting. Yeah. Be in a mental institute or something. Anyway, Francis Ngannou has not yet decided what his next move will actually be. I'm sure he probably wants to take as much time as he can to make sure his knee is good. And he also, before he actually goes into boxing, he's probably going to want to do some hardcore, training and lessons. Not that he wouldn't have had a lesson every day in MMA, but when you're going to switch sport and just do boxing, you've got to get rid of a lot of bad habits. Not necessarily bad habits, but habits that would be bad for boxing, like throwing a knee or getting in a tie clinch.
Or like throwing totally square.
Yeah, that too.
Going for a takedown.
The defense is totally different, A lot of MMA fighters put their arms up to their head, but they're off to the side just in case a head kick comes in. They just block it with the forearm. But boxing's more up by the chin, hands up by the chin. defense type. So it's gonna have to do a lot of adjustments and get used to it. So I would think he'd want to have like 3 or 4 months of hardcore training under his belt before he even signed to fight somebody. And the whole Tyson Fury thing might not be available for a while because apparently, the on again, off again fight plans for Alexander Usyk have popped back up again. So there's talk that fight might be made pretty soon. But we'll see. We shall see. I think Usyk even called him fat. Last I checked. Called Tyson fat. Anyway. Alright, I guess that's it for the news and events for this week. Let me just click on this boxing Google alert, see if I missed anything in there.
Oh, Richard, appreciate this. So I was on a conference call with my supervisor today at work. We have our every other week call, and how's everything going? How's everything? And I'm like, when you're in pain, because my hips have really been hurting me. I was running last week, and it's clearing up. But I do the Olympic, so I'm fine. When I run, it hurts. Whatever. So you get stupid questions amplify because you're in pain, you're annoyed, and then still have a high tolerance for stupidity, which I rarely ever do. So some of these clients that email me, a guy emailed me the same question 3 weeks in a row. I said, buddy, do I have to copy and paste it 3 times for you? So I'm on the phone, and we're talking different things. How's everything going? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, listen, do you have a contingency plan for next Thursday? He said, for what? I said, the Eagles win the Super Bowl, the parade's going to be on Thursday. They've announced that because they have to get security and shit ready. And he's like, and I said, listen, 5 years ago, they shut the company down. But at the time, we were working in Center City. So they said, okay, most employees, we're going to shut the company down because nobody can get to work. People were taking off anyway, left and right. Then they said certain businesses had to stay open. My department at the time closed. They said, if you want to go to the parade, go. If not, just have to stay up on the company. Great. So I said to him, you need to have a contingency plan because I can tell you right now, it's, with this parade, he goes, yeah, but we all work from home now. It's not, you don't have to worry about actually getting into the office. I said, buddy, you ain't going to have a staff because I've already talked. My whole team total is 13 people maybe, and I already know about 9 of us that want to go to the parade. And thankfully, one guy on my small pod is not a sports fan. So hey, guess what, Henry? You're working. You're covering the pod because I'm off. I have seniority. I'm fucking taking off. He's like, yeah, but I said, listen, just sow the seed line right now that you may need a contingency plan on Thursday. Tell these stupid fucking clients that we're closed. Whatever emergency they have can wait 24 hours. And they shouldn't have an emergency because they should plan ahead. So I just wanted, I had to sow that seed in today. I'm like, just making sure you know. Uh-huh. You ain't going to have no tornado next Thursday. Work at home, no work. All right,
so I asked you who's going to score the touchdown. What's the point margin going to be?
I would prefer that the game, unlike 5 years ago, be more than one score. Not to say that's going to happen, but I do not want to pace 11,000 steps like I did during the game 5 years ago.
Yeah, there's a I don't know if it's a parlay or whatever, but there's a bet offered. Will the Eagles score in every quarter? And the guys on the betting show, Daily Wager, I watched yesterday, said that that's a yes. That's a yes bet. They will score in every quarter. They even have a bet. Will there be a field goal that hits the upright and misses? So it can't just hit the upright. It has to hit the upright and be a missed field goal. Unbelievable.
Wow, that's pretty specific.
Yeah. Craziness. Well, remember, I think it was a couple years ago. There was that idiot that went onto the field and got arrested, and was like, I don't know if he was streaking or what, but he ran right onto the field, and they had to stop the action and everything like that. And it turns out he bet on that. There was a bet for that. Like, will there be a streaker on the field or something like that? And it was a gigantic story because they initially, I think they gave him the money, and then they found out that he was the one who ran onto the field, and they took it away. They canceled the bet. I forget how that ended, whether he was able to reverse it or what, but I'm pretty sure it was the money was given to him, and then they took it away. Or when he went to cash it in, they had already found out that he had caused it. So yeah, you can't get paid off for that. And I don't think they ever offered that bet again. Bad mistake. Anyway, you got to imagine too. He probably told a bunch of friends, "I'm going to do this."
Oh, yeah.
You might as well bet on it. Kind of like when your friend was like, "Oh, you won't do this. You won't do that." Want to bet?
Yep.
Watch this. All right. That is all for us.
I'm hoping something on the lines of a 28-17 win.
28-17. That's what you're predicting, huh?
Yeah.
Supposedly there was a
I'm
script.
hoping because you figure that's 11 points.
I saw. I think it was a meme. It was all faked, but somebody put out that the script got leaked, and it was 37-34 Eagles.
Yeah.
That's a lot of scoring, though, for those two teams. I don't know. They've got pretty good defenses, so I don't know if it's going to get that high in score. It'll be a lot of scoring. But yeah, we shall see. Hopefully I win some money. I'm due. I had a couple bad weeks. You know, not huge money, but definitely could have done better on my picks. Oh, one story I forgot to mention. Michael Chandler up against Conor McGregor in The Ultimate Fighter now, the next season. They're going to coach their teams, and then they're going to fight. And I just read, during the broadcast, I saw a headline saying that Michael Chandler will retire with a Conor McGregor win if he beats him. Which is kind of surprising. I mean, the guy's just kind of getting into the groove in the UFC and becoming like one of the most exciting fighters to watch in the UFC. But he does have a lot of mileage, so I guess it makes sense. Anyway, so they're going to coach The Ultimate Fighter. The only bone of contention is that Conor McGregor has been out of the drug testing pool for quite a while. So he's going to have to get drug tested. He's going to have to go through at least 6 months now of drug testing and have 2 negative tests before he can compete again.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, and he blew up quite a bit for the time off that he had. And also, I think it was part of it was because he was doing Roadhouse, the movie. For some reason, that one with Ronda Rousey never got finished. which made me wonder how they were doing it with Conor just so many years later. I don't know how that worked out, but I wonder whatever happened to the Ronda Rousey version. That would have been cool. But anyway, yeah. I don't even know when that movie's coming out, the one with Conor, and I'm pretty sure he's done shooting. But yeah, this I haven't watched Tough in like at least 5 years now, because they've got it all on ESPN Plus now. So I think that was the stupidest thing they could have done. They should have it on free ESPN, but I mean, we all know because of college football and everything, they constantly have to move the UFC fights that are on free ESPN around. You know, they got to put them on ESPN News and stuff like that because other sporting events are running into that time. So I can imagine it's probably pretty hard to put a reality show back into the formatting. But yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that one. I actually like Chandler in that fight. Just because Conor's still got the leg issue and he hasn't fought in so long, and he's obviously got plenty of excuses to party, plenty of money. You know, he's not as hungry as he once was. He's not as he's not as dependent on that MMA money either. You know, he's not out there to get that $50,000 bonus like he might have been before he was a millionaire, possibly a billionaire. I don't know. But no, I don't think he's a billionaire yet. But he's probably got at least $20 million sitting in the bank. And his net worth is probably way more than that. But anyway, we'll see that fight probably sometime in 2023. Oh, 2024 probably, early 2024. Because usually the coaches don't fight on the actual finale of The Ultimate Fighter. They fight at some later date. So they'll probably do that early January, February next year. As long as Conor passes his tests. Anyway. So I guess that's it for this week. Until next week. We shall see.
All right. Hopefully I will be reporting after a parade next Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully we'll be talking about the Eagles making me a lot of money. Alrighty then. Fly, Eagles, fly, right?
That's right.
Awesome. Till next week, thanks for stopping back.